Hi, my name is Natasha Phillips, and this is my Media Clip final project. This is a project that is going to discuss the different exceptionalities that we have learned about and how you can apply the universal design for learning and differentiated instruction to help these students and help them meet all their needs and help all of our students meet all their needs. So, an overview of this presentation, we are going to discuss the universal design and inclusion for learning, making sure that all students have appropriate education resources, a plan, an IEP, that they're included, they're in their gen ed classes, they're with their peers, they're not in a separate room or separate area separated from general students. Differentiated instruction, discussing this method and how it helps to reach all of our students and address all of their needs in different ways. Multicultural and bilingual inclusion. This is just going to discuss some of the barriers that our multicultural students face and also some of the barriers of our bilingual students, which kind of go hand in hand together, and how that instruction goes. Learning disabilities. This is kind of a all-encompassing category, and we'll talk about that. Communication disorders and the different communication disorders there, how we can work with them. Emotional and behavioral disorders, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, traumatic brain injury or TBI, hearing loss, vision impairments, and blindness, and our gifted students, which are also very important to include in this list. So, universal design and inclusion for learning. This method is meant to just make sure that we reach all of our students and we engage them, we motivate them, get them excited about what we're teaching, so that way that we know that we're reaching them. We're going to present our content and our information in different ways. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody's brain operates the same way. Some people are visual learners, some are kinetic, some are more hands-on, some are written. Everybody is different. So we want to present our content and our information in different ways that can reach all of our diverse students. Show different ways that students can express or act or do action on what they've learned. So let's show different ways that the students can show us what they've learned. Let's give them an opportunity or choices for a written test, or maybe different workstations that they could do. They can choose from multiple choice or an essay, or on their homework, maybe they can have the option of picking a visual box to do their own choice of that box for a more simpler instruction. You might choose apples or your own image to count. And also be a part of a team that communicates with other staff or resources to create a seamless plan. There's so many people, and sometimes staff and other resources, speech therapists, occupational therapists, these people might be a part of the team, and they should all be on board with what the student is learning or what areas the student needs to work on, how they can all be connected and work together, so that way the students' plan and goals are all met and all intertwining. So the main goal here of the universal design for learning is to minimize barriers and maximize opportunities. Have multiple resources, multiple areas that they can go to learn, multiple ways to learn, multiple ways of expression, multiple ways to show what they've learned, and multiple means of engagement or choices. Do they need to sit to hear the instruction? Do they need to stand? Are they writing notes, or are they just listening? Give them just some small choices, as long as it's not interrupting other classmates and they're still getting the main goal of what you're teaching. So differentiated instruction is using effective classroom management. To be able to instruct at all, you have to have the class managed, quiet, and in the right place so they can accept and gain the information that you're giving them. Using flexible grouping to group students together, changing that, adapting that grouping, so that way students can gain experiences from each other and knowledge from one another, and open their social networking and peer groups. Ongoing assessments of readiness, interests, and learning profiles. You can't teach a student who isn't ready to learn, and we need to teach them where they're at. Learning their interests and about a student, getting to know a student helps us create a bond and trust, and helps us know where that student's at and how we can better reach them when we're teaching them, because each student in a way should have an individualized learning plan, especially students with an IEP. And teaching students to their overall zone of development. So teaching to that developmental age range is very important, but then also being able to adapt that and tailor that to where it is needed. And once again, know your students, very important to create a bond, a relationship, to be able to know where your student is at and how to teach them. Multicultural and bilingual instruction. So the multicultural instruction, some important things to remember would be students may speak English, they may understand it when you speak it to them, but if you give them some written information or want them to write that information, they may not be able to read or write it, and they may not communicate that because they may be embarrassed or feel different. So keep that in mind. Also, different cultures have different meanings for body language. So eye contact could be very disrespectful. Some students may not want to look at you in the eye. They may be soft-spoken. There may be different things, different body languages and things that they do, different actions or ways of expression that are different, and to know a little bit about them and their culture, and to be able to understand when there is that difference is very helpful. School settings in different cultures can be much different, and that should be considered as well. They may not be as formal, or they may not have the same rules or instruction routines, so all that should be considered. Bilingual instruction, the student may need a translator. Very helpful to try and hire some bilingual teachers so there can be a translator, or so that you can try to put bilingual students with bilingual teachers. Help those bilingual students connect with their peers. If there's a barrier, it's going to be a barrier socially as well. And to be able to help them get experiences and gain knowledge and even some language development from their peers is very important. And ensure a way that there is a way to communicate with the family. So important for the teacher or school administration to still be able to communicate with that family about the child, the plan, goals, and how the child is doing. Learning disabilities. These include disabilities in reading, math, social disabilities, emotional, and memory. Not all learning disabilities are the same. So many different learning disabilities and different characteristics, different ways they'll display themselves. This category is so diverse, and all the more reason that differentiated instruction is so important. These students are not going to learn the same way. And you could have a classroom that has several learning disabilities, different learning disabilities within the same classroom. You have to be able to meet these students where they're at, and be able to teach them and help them stay connected with you and their peers, for their social development, so they don't feel isolated, they don't feel different. And then also academically, just being able to monitor, assess, really response to intervention, knowing what works, what doesn't with these students is going to be key. Communication disorders. This is going to be your speech and language disorders or impairments, and multicultural, language barriers. Speech disorders can interfere with daily communication as well as with social interaction. So it can interfere with just classroom engagement between the teacher and student, and definitely peer and social interaction outside of school as well. Outside resources should be explained and offered to the family and the student. Give the student every opportunity for communication improvement and involvement, engagement. Multicultural barriers we've kind of already discussed, but just knowing, helping them be engaged with their peers, understanding that they may hide certain disabilities because of embarrassment or not wanting to be different. Those are things to watch out for. Emotional and behavioral disorders. Emotional disorders can consist of anxiety, mood. Mood could be depression or even almost like a hyperactivity. Oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, schizophrenia. Some behavioral characteristics could be external behaviors, which would be disruptive or interruptive. They might be aggressive, directed outwardly. There can be some internalized behaviors, which would be depression, withdrawn, once again, that anxiety, fearfulness. These are all things that or disorders that a student can have, characteristics that a student can have, and we need to be aware of these and able to work within their IEP or plan. These students will probably have outside resources and will definitely need some accommodations made within the classroom to function properly. Attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder. This ADHD is a very common disorder and a very misunderstood and misdiagnosed disorder, overdiagnosed disorder. There's a lot of pressure put on physicians and families about characteristics that their student might be displaying that could easily be misdiagnosed with this disorder. This disorder isn't classified under IDEA, and it's not in a separate category. It's really under other impairments. It can come two different ways, hyperactive or inattentive. So inattentive will be just not as involved, lack of focus, maybe spacey and fidgety. Hyperactive is also going to be fidgety, but also disruptive, interruptive, maybe a bit more aggressive, definitely unable to sit still, lots of restlessness. It's very important to have interventions in place and monitor the response to those interventions to provide full learning and social opportunities for these students. Working with students with these emotional and behavioral disorders, once again, one of the most important sections to me because these students tend to be misunderstood and pushed aside. They can be disruptive or annoying, so they tend to be the students that teachers don't have a lot of patience for, but they might really need the patience. These students will need accommodations, engagement. They need choices, just like other students, and a plan to help them stay on task. Traumatic brain injury. These injuries can affect different areas of the brain, which would result in different characteristics. Students with traumatic brain injury could have one or more of the following exceptionalities that we've read about. Basically, depending on the size, the location of the injury, the severity, and the age of the student when the injury occurred is going to depend on what kind of disorders or characteristics that we're going to see with this brain injury. Hearing loss. Hearing loss communication is going to be key with hearing loss, helping the student just be able to hear your instruction as a teacher and communicate with their peers, with you, with their family are all very important things. Teaching sign language, even to the class as a whole, as a small activity, some basic sign language to help everyone communicate would be a great idea. And making sure that assistive technology or devices are in place or that the student has access to those are very helpful as well. Vision impairments and blindness. It's important not to consider the academic planning that goes along with this, which is very important, making sure seat placement is good and lights and everything is good so that way the student can see that they have their technology that they need, their glasses, anything that they need. But also making sure that you're accommodating the student's ability to interact with their environment and the other students in their environment and just being able to move around the class that needs to be considered. How are they going to get their supplies from the cubby area? How are they going to sharpen their pencil? Is there clear walkways? Will they trip and fall? Safe